the person we're going to talk about today is a dear friend of mine and Father Pamone's. Her name is Terrisa Bukovinac, and she works out in San Francisco. Imagine this, Father. She founded a group called Pro-Life San Francisco. I mean, if you want to talk about trying to bring the message of stop the killing of babies, California, as we know, is like New York, liberal as can be. They had abortion before Roe v. Wade. And here's Terrisa there, you know, fighting the good fight out there. So recently, I said, you know what, there's wisdom we can learn. You know, because as you know, Father, we have the religious arguments, right? You know how to, discuss the Catholic faith, and of course, people even in other denominations say, well, you Catholics, you had it right all along. You know, that's why they admire us so much. But then when you talk to someone who has no faith and say, how do you argue the pro-life issue? Well, I think we can learn a lot from them. She stopped by our Priest for Life headquarters not long ago in Florida, and I kind of sat her down and said, okay, Terrisa, we want to learn from you. Let's see what Terrisa had to say.
Well, it started with finding secular pro-life. I was very closeted about my pro-life position, something I didn't feel comfortable talking to anyone about. I lived in a very liberal progressive area. I also identify that way politically, and like I said, I'm a non-believer, so I didn't really see myself fitting into pro-life work at all, and I didn't even really call myself pro-life, although I knew that I had serious reservations about abortion. But once I found secular pro-life, I realized that there were other people like me out there, and it emboldened me to go out and to start talking to people about the issue. In terms of being able to talk to the community about abortion, I just use the same kind of language that they do in terms of their philosophy and their worldview, which is rooted a lot of the times in feminism and the ideals of equality, nonviolence, and non-discrimination. And I talk about abortion in those terms and the fact that abortion is completely incompatible with those ideals. And this is, in a lot of ways, for a lot of progressives, very eye-opening. They've never thought about it in this way before. They've only seen it through the lens of someone they believe is attempting to control their sexuality in some way. And obviously, if we're talking about equality, nonviolence, and non-discrimination, it has a totally different feel to it, and they're able to consider it in a way they hadn't before. And one of the things that you might find really surprising about the community in San Francisco is that although that they're very left-leaning and very liberal, they're still very torn on the abortion issue. And when I bring it up, people will say, that's a really tough issue for me, even in a place like San Francisco. So we know from statistics as well that this is an issue that isn't settled even amongst progressives. So it's a great opportunity for a person like me who can demonstrate sameness with my community to be able to talk to them about abortion and hopefully, ultimately, change the culture that we live in, which is San Francisco, and change the world. Well, the secular position is based on 4 premises. The first is that a fetus, an embryo, a zygote, is a human organism and therefore a human being, that there's no objective distinction consistent that differentiates persons from human beings. And a lot of people find that pretty compelling. And then the third premise is that human beings merit human rights. And that's a core part of being pro-life. And a lot of left-leaning people also hold this ideal. And then the final premise is that bodily autonomy is not enough to justify most abortions. And that one's a little bit more complicated, and that's a lot of the time where the argument ultimately lies, either between the personhood argument or the bodily rights argument. But all of those arguments can be made from a secular position, and a lot of secular people find them quite compelling when laid out in a linear way like that.
Very interesting, and I know, Father, we have a lot to discuss when we come back from this break. So stay with us. We'll be right back.